do this. Yes. All right. Welcome, everybody. I am Elizabeth Ann Atkins with Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. Welcome to Author Talks. I am here with Judge Lloyd, who is an absolute legacy in the city of Detroit for her contributions, and she's a new author. This is Author Talks, where I interview authors who were not published by Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, but they have powerful books to share. So, Judge Lloyd, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Can you hold up your book and tell us the title, what it's about, and why you wrote this book?
This is my book. It's called Your Honor, Your Honor. And it's a path of restorative justice and a journey for me from loss. And my journey was through restorative justice. And this is it.
It's beautiful. So, Judge Lloyd, can you talk about how you and your sister are on the cover and how you created an amazing legacy as twin judges in the city of Detroit who made a tremendous impact on our city and our culture and our country, and how you talk about that in the book, please?
Yeah, my sister and I, two little peas in a pod, our lives were so intertwined and connected. We became models. As we grew up and then through high school, we had a teacher that we were in her speech class, and she picked us to be the commencement speakers at Mumford High School. And
Wow.
we were the first Black students that were commencement speakers at Mumford High. And she said, I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack from this. She said, but I only pick the best. And I want the two of you to speak. And we were in the morning graduation because we had a large graduating class. And so my sister and I were like, do you think we're good enough to do this? And as I talk about it in the book, I said that our answer came when we finished our speeches. My sister went first and I went second. And as we looked out, we had a standing ovation for several minutes.
Oh my goodness.
My one young kid came up to me and said, are you going to be ministers? I said, no. Well, you sound like it. And that was the first time we had heard that, because we're only teenagers, right?
Wow.
But that began, she put a positivity in us. She put a light in us when she selected us. She had told us to go to modeling school. We did that. And we finished that right before we graduated high school. And that led on to a modeling career, okay? Because then they sent us to a modeling agency. And I talk about that in the book, because sometimes you don't have the confidence, and being 17 years old,
yes,
we walked in there and we looked around the room. It was full of pictures all over the wall. And all these glossies, and we're looking. Now, mind you, my sister and I, we were working on a composite, hadn't come in yet. All we had was our little high school pictures in our wallet. And so we're looking around and we said, oh, wow. Then we heard her talking, and she was talking to a guy. And she said, do you have your pictures? Okay, fine. You got your information there for me? Fine. All right, you're working? Okay, keep your day job. And so we looked at him when he finally walked out. He looked like a young Brad Pitt. And my sister and I looked at each other and said, we need to come back. Some real pictures. And so we stood up, and then as we turned, we heard her say, who are you? And we turned around and looked at her, and we said, Leona and Leonia. She said, are you twins? And we said, yes. She said, where were you 2 weeks ago? I said, in school. And she had us come in our office. We were petrified. She had us come in our office, and she was wearing these little bifocals, and she was looking at us, and she says, oh, I could have used you. You got pictures. We said, we're working on those, but we have these high school pictures. Well, that's all you got. Give me that. And
oh my gosh.
We took them out of our wallet and gave them to her. And then she says, well, the auto show is coming up. It's too late to do the executive show. She said, because that's in July. And this was in the beginning of June. See, maybe second week of June. And she said, but I can get you an interview for, the fall. And so we said, okay. And so when we left there, we were ecstatic. We're going to get an interview, right? The next day, we're in the bed sleep. A few times my mother used to let us sleep when we were on, vacation at school. And the phone rang, I answered it, and it was that agent. And she says, girls, I don't know what you said yesterday. She said, but you got the executive show. You got the show in the fall. I need you to go at 2:00 today. Write this down. You got a pencil? Write this down. And I wrote it down. She said, you're getting your fitting today. You're getting your fitting today. And I hung up the phone. My sister looked at me. She said, what? I said, we got the auto show.
What?
She said, without any pictures or anything, I said, we got the auto show. Biggest show. This is the biggest gig.
So it's the North American International Auto Show in Detroit, the Motor City, which attracts media and people from around the world. It's where all the new cars are unveiled.
Exactly.
Thousands and thousands of people come.
Right.
And so you were models in front of the cars. Is that right?
And that was the funny thing. They said, we really didn't care what we stood in front of, right? And they had a truck called Twin Eye Beams on this truck, right? And so we said, that's fine. They said, now, when you leave this truck, you go to this truck, but you can't touch that truck. You can't get in that truck. And we said, They said, that truck is $300,000. We looked at it. It didn't look like a truck. It looked like a DeLorean car, way before DeLorean came out with it. And they didn't want the models to touch the truck. So we posed by that's supposed to be the truck of future. Right. And the doors would come up hydraulically on this thing. And you got to imagine what year this is, though.
What year was it?
This is 1967. 1967.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there we were standing beside this $300,000 vehicle of the future that looked like it was about to fly off the floor. And that's how we started. My gosh. And then we did the regular auto show. But my aunt came, and she's a very glamorous lady. And I write about this. I said she came from Chicago to see us. And her thing was, she walked through the door, she told the guard, show me the two prettiest girls in this show. Now, the auto show, you know how big the auto show is.
Yes, huge, Cobo Center.
But
yes.
Of course, my aunt had a little soft spot in her heart for her nieces.
Right.
And he took her right over to us. And she smiled. And then we told her later on, she was staying a couple of days. She only came to see us in the show. And we said, Catherine, we get a chance to do the show in Chicago. And we said, right there where you are. And she said, I won't come out the door to see you in Chicago. And we looked at her and we said, well, what do you mean? We will be right there. And she said, I don't want you doing anything that will distract you from your goal. And this will distract you from college. She said, you're going to college. And that's what got us in the auto show. When the lady interviewed us, we were at Ford Motor Company. We had to march through Ford Motor Company. And Ford Motor Company's, the executive building. And we're walking through, we're dressed alike. We're walking through and everybody said, they must be models. And we're walking through with our little outfit on. And we get in there and the lady glances at us, asks us some questions. Where are your pictures? We saw all these models with these great big portfolios of pictures. We said, well, we just have high school pictures. We just graduated, but we're working on that. She said, that all you have? And we said, yes. So she said, give it here. So we gave them to her. And then she said, well, you're too late for the executive show, but if in fact you get picked, you'll be contacted in September, And so we said, okay. And so she said, by the way, what jobs do you have? And then she looked up at us. She said, now, where are you working? And we said, we're not working anywhere. We just graduated high school. And we said, Leona looked at her. She said, very unapologetically, Leona said, we will be attending Wayne State University in the fall. Ooh. And that's what we will be doing. Yes. And she really looked at us, took her glasses off, and she said, my son goes to that school.
Oh,
said,
wow.
Excellent school. She said, nice meeting you. And then we walked out, and I said, Leona said, did you notice she never looked at us until we said we were going to go to school? And because we have so many pretty girls coming through, just, one after another. But she saw somebody there who had a brain. And so
Wow.
so when the lady called us, and said, I don't know what you said or what you did, that was it.
Uh-huh.
So when my aunt said, I don't want anything distracting you, so I will not come to see that show. Well, with her saying that, and then another model who had modeled in the show for many, many years, she saw us, and she was a MC as well as a model. And she said, this is your first year? I said, yes. She said, I've never seen you two before. I said, yeah, this is our first year. She said, I travel with the auto show. And she said, later on, do you want to see my magazine book that I have, like a portfolio scrapbook? I said, yeah. We're excited, 17 years old. And so at the end, we went to her trailer, and this great big book, and we're flipping through this book, and we're flipping through this book, and we're oohing and on, and we were like, wow, she was really a knockout back then. She's pretty now, but she's, ooh, and we were going through it. And then at the end, we waited for the next book. And she said, that's all. That's all I had.
Oh.
And she said, don't let this be your life.
What?
She said, right now, I'm getting to the part and to the end of my career where I'll be lucky if I get jobs. She said, stay in school. She said, don't be like me.
Wow.
Now, when my sister and I were riding home, and we were real quiet, and Leona said, are you thinking about what she said? I said, yeah. And she said, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to have only a booklet of pictures. I want my life to mean something. And I said, I do too. And she said, maybe Aunt Catherine was right. And maybe this lady's right. She said, I don't want to go to Chicago. I said, neither do I. And so she said, let's just get our money from these shows. And then, we just keep going. We're in school. Let's just keep focusing. And my aunt was wise. She knew that all that glitter and all that hocus pocus has a way of drawing you. And I know that because years and years later, when Hollywood called about, coming out there for shows and things of that nature, and we went, I saw all of that. And if it had happened too early in our life, we would have probably put it on pause and said, well, we'll do this now and come back to it. And my aunt said, you won't come back. You won't come back. So because of those two, we decided not to, and that led, of course, to us becoming teachers. And the things that we did as teachers, and what we learned in college at that time. You have Stokely Carmichael, you had H. Rap Brown, you had Angela Davis, you had all of those folks, and that's who we looked up to. That's who we listened to. And the civil rights movement prior to that had done a good job, but this generation felt it didn't go far enough. It didn't go far enough, and we didn't want to wait. We wanted what we wanted now, which reminds me of Black Lives Matter.
Was that the 70s, or were you still?
That was in the 70s.
Okay. So you've already graduated college. You're teaching now, right?
This was in between. It was like from 69 when we were in college, and then afterwards when we graduated in 71 after college. And so during the college years at 69, I changed my hair to an afro. Everybody wasn't too happy with that, and I write about that because you are learning at this time that Black is beautiful. You are learning at this time that the hair was a reflection of what you felt about yourself as a person, and that it was okay. Now, a lot of people, be it Black or white, had mixed feelings about the afros back then. My mother didn't like it. My father said, beautiful. So we had a split household. But we kept it that way. And so my boss who walked in, he was the director of the art department, and he looked at me. Now my immediate boss, the supervisor, she hadn't said anything, and I was a white lady. She hadn't said anything. The other two white secretaries hadn't said anything. But he walks in, and he's he's like the dean of the art department. And he walks in, and he looks at me, and he said, "New hairdo?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I like it." I said, "Thank you."
Wow.
And so he walks into his office and closes his door. A few days later, she comes up, I'm typing. As I'm doing this is my little job that I do, as a work assistant. And she said, Leonia, we were looking at your hairstyle. Now they're all the other two secretaries, they all know this is gonna happen. I don't know this is gonna happen. And she said, but we kind of like your hair better the other way. And I said, really? I said, now you must understand how my mind has been, marinating over a period of time about things and some stuff that had happened to me in high school, which I haven't talked about, that I was discriminated against. So I was kind of real sensitive about discrimination. And so I thought the hairdo was a positive thing. And I looked at her and I said, well, that's too bad. I said, because I'm going to wear it like this for a long time. I said, maybe the rest of my life. And so she looked at me, she turned red in the face and turned around and went and sat back down. And all the time I worked there, I kept my hair exactly like that. My thing was, it was a form of self-expression. And no matter what that is, I should be free to have that expression. And I was not afraid of standing up for myself. I was not afraid of speaking out. And all of that continued in me and transferred to the students I taught.
Wait, what level were you teaching? What were you teaching?
High school.
High school. Okay.
I was at Cass Tech, and my sister was at Redford. And
okay, one of the best high schools in the country.
Exactly. And I started out teaching English, but I had a double major in college. So when the opportunity opened itself up, I got a chance to teach performing arts. And that was like my world at that point. And I got to pick plays, and I picked a play called Black Girl. And that play, it showed that, number one, women's rights were being marched at that time too. Gloria Steinem, all the rest of them, right kind of on the tail of the Black movement. So you got these two movements going simultaneously. And this play was to speak to the young ladies out there. It was to say, look, if you've got to believe in yourself. And even if that means standing alone, I said, you stand alone, but don't you give in. And that's what this play was about. The little girl just wanted to go to college. Her sisters were tearing her apart. And finally, her grandmother, they were fighting her because she wanted to go, away to college. And they said, the grandmother said, look, if she turns out to be nothing, it'll be her nothing, but you leave her alone. And she helped her granddaughter up off the floor. She said, the girl straightened up her jacket, grabbed her suitcase, and went and got in a cab and went home. I saw this as a play on TV, it had been done on TV, and I remember crying watching this play. And I said, I'm going to do this on stage. And I picked that play that following year. I picked that play, and I said, that's what I want to do. I did the same thing with The Me Nobody Knows. Okay, and it's about kids that they grow up in a ghetto, and people don't know them, but you have to know who you are. Right. You have to know the strength you have. And I picked that play. It was a Broadway musical. I picked that play, and it was overwhelming success. Both plays were overwhelming successes.
Oh, wow.
I looked out, and just to show you how radical I was, I didn't think there was nothing I couldn't do. I just had to put my mind to it and make a plan. And did I know how I was going to do it? No, ever, never.
Really? You didn't know?
Nope. Just went for it. And when the kids, we got calls from like Grosse Pointe, Bloomfield Hills. I told this one little girl, I said, look, she was from England. And I said, okay, show me what you got. I said, I want you to call all the news stations. I want you to get me on at least three TV shows. I want to promote this movie. This play. She said, okay, Miss Lloyd. I said, let's see how good you are. She came back. She had me booked on 3 shows. And I said, I was like, Profiles in Black was one, a couple of morning shows. And I said, tell them that I want to have a couple of numbers done from my artists that are in this play. So I had to get these performances ready real quick. Okay, so she said, okay, and she got me on, and they performed, and we started getting calls. They wanted to hire them to come out and perform
Wow.
at parties in Bloomfield Hills. And I said, they're not for hire for that. I said, they're not for hire for that. I said, and I told the kids, I said, people are calling. You all are so talented, they want to hire you. And so we did the play. They got standing ovations every single night. And
Wow.
it was so funny because usually the big school musical, which was done by another teacher in my department, he did the big auditorium. Me and the other teacher, she did hers on the stage, which meant the stage was so large a cast, they put chairs so that you could sit in on the stage. So you're only gonna have a small audience if you're doing all that. And I told her, I don't want to do that. I want mine in the huge auditorium. And then I said, and Leona and I, we were like, let's make sure you can hear upstairs. I said that my boss, she was my supervisor. She said, no one ever uses the bell. I don't even know if we can hear. I said, we can hear up there. And when I went on TV, we had a line whipping around the building to buy tickets. And they said, we're giving out raffle tickets. We don't have any more tickets to give out. And then I laughed and I said, great. She said, we're putting him in the balcony but we didn't plan to put him in the balcony, Leonia. I said, it'll be fine. I tested the balcony. So I went up there as soon as the curtains opened. I went up there and my sister and I were standing there, and it opens with a song. And as soon as the girl finished, the crowd started cheering. I said, I knew it was going to be a hit. And so when the kids finished, we had 4 days of plays. And when they finished, they were, nostalgic. But they said, oh, I wish it could go on. I said, yeah, I said, maybe it'd be good if you did it like a music hall. And so they said, do you think we could? I said, you're good enough. They said, you think so? So I went to that same little girl. And I said, all right, now here's another assignment for you. I said, Mr. DeChera, I said, he doesn't know me. I said, but he runs music hall. Get me an appointment with him. I said, one that we can showcase a couple of songs for him. And I said, I don't take no for an answer. So she said, all right, Miss Lloyd. She got us an audience with him. And so I sat away from him in the auditorium, and my couple of my kids, they sat behind him. They wanted to hear what they were saying. And they were watching them. I said, we're going to do 3 songs. And so they said, fine. And so he sit up there with another guy. And Leona and I are like, I wonder what he's going to think. He's got all these big actors that come in here for music hall. These are kids and they're gas tech. I said, but I think they're top notch. And so he watches them. And when the kids met with me later on, they said, they were oohing and ahhing. They said, God, listen to her voice. And they were knocked out. So when we met, he said at the very end, he said, okay, can we meet you up, up in our office? And we said, yes. And I went up there and he said, we want to do it.
What?
We want to do it.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to we're going to get a couple of big names, going to mix them in with these kids. And he said, I think this is going to be fantastic.
Wow.
We're going to get back with you. He said, Miss Lloyd, thank you for bringing this. And I said, okay. And my sister and I walked out on cloud 9. Here we go. We're starting something else. And then Leona, the kids, I said, I see them tomorrow. And Leona said, we got home. Leona said, Leonia, we can't do this. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, we're going to law school in the summer. We're not going to be here. We're quitting. Remember, we're quitting. And so I said, oh God, that's right. She said, we're not going, we don't have time to do all that stuff that we do with them normally. She said, you got to tell your kids tomorrow. You can't, they're floating around wondering how this went. And I said, wow. So I get back there the next day and I tell them, I said, they're waiting for me in my office. There's a bunch of them. And first of all, they loved you and they were cheering and all this. And I said, secondly, they want to do it. And they said, oh, wow. I said, third, I won't be able to. And they got real quiet. And I told them, I said, I'm leaving for law school. And I said, and I can't give half to you all and half to law school. That's just not the way I'm made up.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and I hate that. I said, because in my little head, I was like, I know they're not going to pick these kids because they're going to give me excuses about they're only teenagers. When they said yes, I said, oh. And then when my sister said, Leonia, can't do it. And the one little boy said, that's okay, Miss Lloyd. At least you showed us we're good enough for music hall.
Wow.
If we're good enough for music hall, we're good enough for anywhere else we try.
Wow.
And that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. They weren't angry. They weren't angry with me.
Mm-hmm.
They knew they were good enough. And that's the whole thing. That's why Leona and I wanted to write a book. We had said a long time ago that there were so many things in our lives that happened that were just totally unbelievable. I said tragedies, things that would normally stop people. I said, and it didn't stop us. And I said, we want people to know that they just have to keep going, that they can't stop. And if you get in a situation where you think, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I said, but you are. Are. And you can't stop because, you got to think and say, okay, let me come up with a plan. The same thing happened when we started our law firm. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but we were determined to do it. We were determined to do it. And this is when divine intervention happens. Yes. This is when things happen for you and you don't know why. Just like the auto show. Here we are with little pictures of us from high school. But we, amongst all these other models that look like they had been in New York, etc., we were selected. Yeah. Why? Okay. There's tons of beautiful girls. Far beautiful more than my sister and I. My sister and I we weren't raised thinking about how we looked. We were raised by a mother who said, it matters what you put in your head. She said, because they can never take that away from you. Right. She said, looks will change. She said, but what is in your head is what's important. So when you grow up with a parent like that who only encouraged, I thought I had cut this off, that is only going to encourage you to, number one, I want to see your grades. I don't care, people saying you look cute, you this, you that. Didn't matter to her. What mattered to her were your grades, and that instilled in us, we've got to do something with our lives. When my mother, and I write about this, and she said, well, she took us to get ice cream at Kresge at that time. And we saw a lady cleaning the floor. She was on her knees scrubbing the floor with a brush, and it was a Black lady. And she said, now we're sweating because we didn't walk all the way to River Rouge from Detroit. And we just can't wait for that ice cream. And so my mother said, take a good look at her because that's what you're going to be doing when you graduate from high school. And we said, because you have us doing that now every summer when we get out of school. We don't want to do that. And she said, oh, yeah, that's what you're going to do. She said, because if you choose not to go to college, then you're going to have to get a job. And the only job you're going to be able to do is something with hard labor. She said, because you won't have any skills. She said, so just take a good look at that because it's either college or you're going to be doing jobs of that nature. And my sister
Judge Lloyd, this was the 70s, and what profession did your parents have?
My mother was a registered nurse. She was she was born in a family of 11 kids. All of them went to college except two. Two became licensed morticians. One of them in Boston, a licensed mortician, and I write about him. He got to Boston after World War II with 2 quarters in his pockets, ended up with 2 of the largest largest funeral parlors in Boston and in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Mhm.
But that's the kind of family she came from. Her mother believed in education for all of them. I had one uncle who graduated from Yale. And he wrote a book of poetry. He sent it to all his siblings. I was a little girl. I didn't know what that was. It was called Splintered Darkness, and I didn't have the clue of what splintered darkness meant. But when I read it, I discovered all my relatives way after my sister died, and they connected with me. Okay, and I went to see where my mother lived, and I heard about all of them, including him. And she said, when the Klan, and I talk about this, when the Klan burned down, my grandmother owned two houses, one across the street from each other, and one had a gas station and a store. And she was known during the time of the Depression just to give people food because money didn't mean anything anymore.
And
And
what state? What state was that?
South Carolina.
Okay.
South Carolina. And one night she told my mother, she said, hide under the bed. The Klan was coming through. And the Klan put the burning crosses on her yard, and they burnt her house down from across the street. So that was nothing new to my grandmother, okay? But did it put a fear in my mother as a little girl? Of course it did. She had no desire. When she got older and left, and the majority of them left, she said she didn't want to go back. Her mother had passed, her father had passed. She had no reason to go back. And nothing, you could not convince my mother to go back, So when I got contacted by a cousin, and she said, I'm your cousin, blah, blah, blah. She was a detective in Washington, D.C. She found me. And I saw that she really was. And she told me about the other uncles and aunts. And I just found a whole new side of my family. When I got on Facebook, I found a whole new side on my father's family. They started contacting me, quite a few. And I was so touched by some of the things that they said. One young lady said, for years, I have taken the articles of you and your sister in Ebony magazine. She said they were handed down in the family. And she said, and I have it on the Black History Month display. And she took pictures to show me that this really happens every year to her. She said, I never thought I'd meet you. And so if COVID is gone next year, I will be at the Lloyd reunion.
Oh, nice.
They're all waiting to meet me. They're all waiting to
Wow.
meet me. A lot of them have already ordered this book.
Wow. Judge Lloyd, you're beautiful and brilliant, and so is your sister. So you have this law firm, and then you're campaigning to become judges, and your theme was Twins for Justice. I remember the bulletin boards and just the uniqueness of the two of you. I mean, to be beautiful and brilliant and judges is just remarkable and so unique. And you came up during a time when opportunities for women and Black women especially were not, there was probably nobody that you could look up to and say, I want to be her.
Right.
So what pushed you? It sounds like your mother was the driving force, but what pushed you to both decide to become lawyers and then judges?
After becoming teachers, the civil rights movement was going on. They were bringing on more shows on TV showing young people getting involved. Like Mod Squad was one, but there was one Black person in Mod Squad. And then you saw, eventually shows like LA Law, things like that. And I said, again, it was justice for people. That was the theme in our life, at that point. We have to be treated fairly. Things that happened in undergrad, me helping with a protest at Wayne State, and the armed guards coming through, and they're lined up with the bayonets and stuff against us. And I wasn't scared. I said, because if we don't stand up for her, who's going to stand up for her? So when you got all of this going on, in your life, and I said, when I was a teacher, I said, I'm going to go to law school. I said, because I saw that's the way you help people. That's what I wanted to do. Leona said, me too. See,
Oh, I have chills.
we both got affected by what we saw. Okay,
Yeah.
the media does affect young minds.
Hmm.
And so, I said, but we'd already planned to do the teaching thing. So we're going to do that and then go to law school. And we got into teaching. I was over the pre-law group at Cass Tech. And we had got a car. That was the main thing. I needed transportation. Leona did too. And we said, okay, we have a 4-year car debt. The minute that debt's over with, we're in law school.
Oh, wow.
That's what happened.
That's how you decided.
And Leona, that's why my sister said, you got to tell those kids you can't do that play. Already been accepted. She said, we already accepted. So I said, you're right. And Leona had applied at several schools. She was going to go to UCLA. She used to visit down there all the time in the wintertime. We had a girlfriend that lived down there, and she took pictures by the school and all that. And I was dating someone and I had been dating this person for almost 10 years. And so I said, I only applied at one school. That was Wayne. I was going to go here because otherwise I'd be going away. And being young and immature, I wasn't going to break up the relationship. I might have rethink that now that I've grown up, because that's a long story. But that was one school that I said that I was going to. Wayne was the one I picked, and then Leona had applied there too. She got accepted in all the schools that she applied to. But UCLA was where she wanted to go. I said, Leona, please go to Wayne with me.
Oh.
That was a big ask. And I said, I only applied at Wayne. I got accepted at Wayne, but I don't want to go by myself. My sister looked at me. She said, how long I've been wanting to go to UCLA. And she had a teacher in Black Studies that wanted her to go to Harvard. And my sister said, And so he said, send off for the application. He did the application, and Leona just said, He thought she was outstanding in his class. Leona was always participating in his class, but my sister did not send for the application. So he came in one day and said, here's the application for Harvard. I know you haven't asked for it. And he's not, fill it out, send it in. So Leona took it home and we were looking at it and she said, do you see this tiny little space that says, if you got any B's or lower, explain each one. Leona said, I'm not filling this out. And she said, I'm going to be honest with you. She didn't have anything bad like D's or E's or anything like that, but she had B's. You had to explain a B. And so my sister said, I'm not going to go to Harvard. She said, I'm not applying there. And he just thought the world of her. He thought she should go. And Leona said, no. But I'm probably going to go to UCLA.
Okay.
He didn't say anything, but, and you think back, I would say now to young people, what do you have to lose? Mm-hmm. Apply.
Right.
Fill it out, attach something on the back. Okay. Yeah. But back then, at that time, I had a drive to go. Okay. And but it was going to be to Wayne State, so she decided to go to Wayne State with me. And I'm so glad she did, because I remember we were in the summer session that they had for students, and this was for the ability to show them that, hey, number one, you can cut the mustard. Okay, that's number one, and number two, if everything goes good in the summer session, you've already finished two classes that you don't have to take in the fall.
Right.
So that was really, really good incentive for us. And so, but the only thing they didn't tell you is that these classes are going to cover a year in one summertime.
Oh my goodness.
So that means that you like quadruple your reading every night.
Law school reading is no joke. So to quadruple it, oh my goodness.
And and I was like, we never went to bed until like three. Man next door, his light was always We cut our lights off. His was still on. I said, what's he studying for? What's he doing? I didn't know the man, right? And one day we came out of our driveway and we saw him. We said, hi, I'm your neighbor. We noticed that your light is on longer than ours. We're studying for law school. Why is your light on all night? He said, I'm studying for med school. He said, we take a test almost every day. I said, oh, I see. Good luck. You know, but
That's so good.
Our life had prepared us for hard work. Okay. And hard work was nothing for Leona and I. It was just another challenge. And I talk about in the book all the different challenges that came our way, from my mother's subarachnoid hemorrhage when we were 5, to her personality changing. We knew 3 personalities. My father knew 4. It's difficult when a subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is like a bleeding stroke, if you come out of it, okay, then at that point you don't have the ability that you had before. Like a lot of people that come out of strokes and they have to reinvent their lives. Well, they didn't have counseling back then to help you do that. So you walk around wondering why you can't remember stuff. My mother was a registered nurse and did not have the confidence anymore to go into nursing. Now, she was already taking care of us. We were 5 years old. And I write about the stretcher and the big red wagon with the flashing lights that we saw, and her being carried out on a gurney. And, you know, my father was the one who took care of us and made sure we were dressed for school and made sure we went off to school. My aunt would walk us, but my father would be the one getting us ready. You know, he was at the hospital every night. She was in the hospital for over 2 months. And she told my father, she said, don't let them go in my head. She said, if you do, I will never be the same. And she said, you got to promise me you won't let them go in my head, no matter what.
You mean have brain surgery?
Yes. She didn't want any brain surgery. So my father said, okay. My father probably figured, she's a registered nurse. I don't know anything about the body. My wife does. My mother was valedictorian of her nursing class. She was valedictorian of her high school class. She's an extremely smart woman. And so they kept telling my father, we have to go in, and that means drilling holes and draining that fluid out, okay, circling the brain, okay. And he said no. And then they said, if you don't, the chances are she's going to die. And he said, no. My wife told me specifically not to do that. And so they kept coming at him every day. You know, her chances are slim. And if she comes through this, she could possibly be blind. She could have brain damage for the rest of her life. She could this, she could that. He said, no. He went to the chapel in the hospital, and every day he would come in there and he would look at her. And finally, one day she woke up and he saw her eyes were open, and he was excited. And he went up there to her and he told her, you know, you're back. And, you know, she looked, she said, who are you?
Oh, no.
And he said, you know, I'm your husband. She said, I'm married. And he said, yes, you have a set of twin girls. I have children. And so the doctor told him, bring in pictures, and we would draw pictures for my mother every day. My sister and I, determination was setting in at the age of 5. My father had to take those pictures in every day.
That's remarkable.
And to make sure she had something. We just didn't know how lost she was. We just knew she was. And he would come in there. She would, as she finally got a chance to get up and walk around, she would, you know, have coffee with him. But then she would put salt in where it was supposed to be sugar in her coffee. So you got to know that she was, you know, nothing like she was before. Now, when my mother came back, my father bought a new house because the doctor said, make sure she doesn't go back to the house she was in, because something there made her worry. And if you can, move her somewhere else. So he picked a house in Southwest Detroit. It was a whole new subdivision. That's where he moved my mother and our whole family. And that's where I grew up.
Oh, okay.
So, we'd finished kindergarten over there, in Conant Gardens, but we then moved over to Southwest Detroit. And,
Okay.
that my mother was the only mother we knew. We smiled, and she was cheerful with us, etc. We had no idea she was really learning us.
Oh my goodness.
She didn't remember us.
Wow.
There's a picture of my mother in the book. We have daughter and mother look-alike outfits on. Okay. And this was before her subarachnoid hemorrhage. And so, my father never told us anything differently until we were in college. I had just started college, but it was after her nervous breakdown. See, what I learned later on was that if a person gets extremely depressed, and that's what happens after strokes, because your life is totally changed that you knew, what do you do now? Well, my mother hid hers. She hid hers because back then people didn't talk about that. She just knew she didn't have to go back to work, that my father she was already taking care of us full time because she had a rash that broke out from nerves all over her body. So they had already recommended prior to the subarachnoid hemorrhage, stay home, take care of your 2 new babies, and you can't do everything, Ms. Lloyd. You superwoman. You can't do everything. Just wait a few years and then go back into nursing. So my mother reluctantly said, okay, because she loved nursing, but it never happened because before she could do that, she had the subarachnoid hemorrhage. When we got into college, and I told my father I have to write a story on our family. And I said, my mother had just, she's still in the hospital from the nervous breakdown. And so me and Leona are fixing him food, something we had never done before. My mother always did all that. And so he's sitting there. He said, what do you want to know? And so we said, everything. And he talked about when they got married, and then 5 years into the marriage, they had us. And he said, so that's 10 years of marriage for them. And he said, when your mother had that subarachnoid hemorrhage, he said, she never came back. He said, the woman that I'm married to was not the woman I married. He said, this is a totally different woman. And I said, well, what do you mean, Daddy? What do you mean she's mama? And he said, that's the mother you know. Yeah, but that's not the woman I married. I said, well, how is she different? He said, it's hard for me to put in words. But then I began to think about all the times I would hear their friends say to my father, Leon, are you staying? Are you going to get divorced or what? Because they all knew she never came back. They knew her before. He said, I married her for better or worse. He said, I would never leave my babies, never. And so, I write about him because he went through that. He went through 2 nervous breakdowns with her. Her personality changed after every nervous breakdown. And they were violent nervous breakdowns. Okay. Leona and I, the speech, we ended up being the speakers at our graduation. She ended up helping us. She was good at, speaking, and we would practice our little speech in front of our mother. And we ended it with a poem because my mother said she ended hers with a poem. So I'm going to end mine with a poem. And lo and behold, that poem ended up being in the packet I used to give away at drug court for drug court graduations, which is called Don't Quit. And it's in the book. But who would have known, right? I was only 16 when I gave the speech. And so, there she is in the hospital. And she, a few days before we were to graduate, she has that breakdown. And Leona and I, we would cry at night. We said, we can't do this without her. And, and then, my aunt came, the one that came for the auto show. She came in to be there for my father and us.
Mm-hmm.
And, we would look at each other and as we were crying in our rooms and trying to practice the speech. And then, we said, Mama wants us to do it. She wants us to do the speech. And we asked the doctors, who said, well, you said she's better now. Can't she just go see the speech and come right back? She only has 5 more days in the hospital, you said. They said, no. They said, no.
Oh.
No, that would be involuntarily letting yourself out. And if you do that, then you can't come back if there's a problem. So mother said, do it the way you did it for me.
Oh, so beautiful.
And it took strength, but that's what this book is about, is that you have to garner your strength. You have to know, sometimes there are going to be battles that are uphill. And you just got to know you can do it. You just got to know, you got to keep pushing it. When we were taking piano lessons, and I go through that about how we negotiated with our parents, and we were 10 years old. And she says, we don't have the money to spend on a brand new piano, because back then $2,500 for a piano was a lot of money. Okay. And so Leona said, well, what if we could find one much cheaper than that? She looked at my sister like the whippersnapper. She said, and where are you going to find that?
All right.
Leona said, the want ads in the newspaper, because we used to comb the newspapers, right? So my mother said, well, you find it first. So for several weeks, we're going through the want ads every day. And we finally find a piano for $25.
Oh my goodness.
So we went to her and said, look, there's a piano, it's $25. Can we have it? And my mother started laughing at us. And she said, I bet it's a piece of junk. And she said, you don't want a piano. We said, yes, we do. Well, can we at least go look at it, Mom? And so she asked my father. My father said, well, let's call the number. We go tomorrow. So we went, and when we saw this old gray piano, I mean, it had been painted over probably 5. And my mother looked at that piano. She said, you don't want that, do you? We said, yes. And my mother said, you what? And she said, we want that piano. And so we knew she had $25. So she said, let me tell you something. If I get this piano, I better hear those keys talking to me every day. She said, because every day you don't play the piano, I'm going to, number one, you don't get an allowance for the next week. We said, we're going to play the piano every day.
Wow.
So
that's
my father
awesome.
He came back the next day with his friend, and they loaded up that big old piano and took it in the basement. we took lessons for 5 years. We finished all the John Thompson books. But the thing I learned is that we had to walk over a mile to get to this lady's house in River Rouge. And we didn't know we were going to have to be walking. My mother said, oh, I'm going to take him. She says, no, you're going to walk every Wednesday. Every Wednesday, she said, you're walking. My cousin, who was taking piano lessons from her, she was 2 years younger, she got drove to hers. And she lived down the street. Her mother would drive her. My mother, no. If you want these lessons, put your coat on, got your scarf, head out the door. We did this for 5 years. We never missed a lesson.
Wow.
And when it snowed, it was a blizzard. And I talk about this, and the man on TV saying, don't go out unless you cannot even see in front of you. It's, you can't put your hand. And we said, Mama, the man is saying don't go. And can't you just call Miss Royals and tell her that we'll see her next week? She says, no, you're going to see her today. She said, get your boots on.
Wow.
She said, but Mama, she said, here's an extra scarf for each one of you. She said,
wow.
Go ahead. And we walked in this blizzard, and we finally got there. We were so frozen. We had to unthaw first.
Right, before you could play the piano.
But it was like, push yourself through. These were lessons.
I love that.
these were lessons that she taught us. You
Mm-hmm.
can't give up just because something gets hard.
Mm-hmm.
When I did drug court, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
hardest things these people had to do was change their lives inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's not that simple to say to somebody, I want you to stop this when this is all they know.
Mm-hmm.
This has become part of their life. I went to a seminar and for judges who were drug court judges, and they said, we want you to understand how hard it is to do what you're asking people to do, which is to change their life. They told us to fold our arms. So we did. They said, now reverse it, unfold them and put them the other way. And boy, we couldn't get our hands to go back. And I was like, they said, now something that simple, you couldn't do it. Think about what you're asking these people to undo in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not the fact that they'll have a better life and all that. You're asking them to go through the mechanics of changing what their body knows, what their mind knows, what they feel emotionally with and without drugs or alcohol.
So, Judge Lloyd, I just want to give the context. You were at Detroit's 36th District Court, and you were there when my mother was Chief Judge, Judge Marilyn Atkins. And that's how I know you from so long ago. And so you created drug court because there were so many drug cases in the city of Detroit, and the 36th District Court it's a huge, bustling municipal court. So why did you create drug court, and what was the purpose of it, and what was the outcome?
Well, I didn't create it. It got created by Judge Baltimore first.
Oh, Judge Joe Baltimore. Pardon me.
Right.
Judge Baltimore, I apologize.
No,
Judge Baltimore created Judge Court.
Right.
Drug
and he picked Judge Jefferson we were all at this conference. My sister and I, he was there. I didn't know he was there. And we heard a drug czar talk about drugs. And we said, we need that at our court. Over 80% of these cases that we get in our court are some kind of way connected with drugs and alcohol.
Oh.
And we said, if we could just help some people, we see it come in our regular court. We need this, and they're going to give a grant. So we told Judge Baltimore, we said, you're going to start it, right? And he said, yeah, I'm going to go talk to him now. We said, good. So we said, well, we're interested. Well, he didn't pick us. He picked Judge Jefferson.
Judge Patricia Jefferson was the first drug court judge at 36th District Court. Just want to clarify
he was first.
He was the
first
did
judge. It first.
Okay.
And then on trial basis. And then he picked her as the first one. And she had done it probably about maybe 4 or 5 years before she asked me to join it. Well, she asked Leona to join her.
Okay.
And Leona said, and it all came about because it was one probation officer who said, I think the twins would be good for drug court because they do it in their own courtroom. And he said, they don't send them to us. He said, both Lloyds are doing like what we're doing in drug court. They do it themselves. And I said, and I told the guy, I said, well, I mean, I don't have anything against you all. I said, it's just I get results.
And what are the results, though? What were you doing?
Those are the people put the drugs down. The people and they kept it down, and they went and got jobs. They became productive citizens again. So I said, he said, but that's why I want you to be in drug court. And Leona said, Pat asked Leona. Leona said, okay, if my sister can come too. And then she said, well, I only need one of you. And then Leona said, well, I'm not coming if she doesn't come. She said, because I can rely on Leonia. She said, when anything goes wrong, I can rely on her. She's reliable. And so Leona said no. And then about, I don't know, 3-4 months later, she died. And I was out for 3 months after that. And when I came back, I was back a couple of months. And then I was asked to do drug court. And Judge Jefferson just said, I should have did what she wanted. And I said, and I looked at her and I could see the sadness in her eyes and her eyes. And I knew she really meant that. And I said, Leona and I wanted to do it to help a larger amount of people. Because when we have these kind of cases over here, then we got these kind of cases, we rotated. So it wasn't like just one group of people that have drug-related problems. We had landlord-tenant cases, we had small claims cases, and then we get around to these cases, and then that's when we see some people that had some drug problems. But if you're in
Oh.
drug court, you can focus. And so by this time, your mother was chief judge, and Pat wrote her a letter. And I still have that letter to this day. And she asked Judge Atkins to enlarge the drug court by adding me as a drug court judge.
Oh,
And your mother
wow.
said yes. And she met with
Okay.
both me and Jefferson. And she said yes. And she said, you'll start at the beginning of the year, which was a year after my sister died. And so they were building the docket for me, so that I would have a drug court docket with people. And then Judge Jefferson said, hey, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to change. She said, I already told everybody, Judge Lloyd's going to come in with her own changes. And she said, be ready to work. And I started laughing. I said, well, I grew up with a work ethic. Okay. We got to do the work. We got to put in the work to help people. It's not gonna do it by itself. And your mother was a big supporter of that. I mean, she was there when my sister died. Your sister was in the hospital. She was juggling both of those things at the same time. But I remember her coming, and I was so out of it. And she was talking to my minister in my living room. She was saying, this is where we're going to have the funeral. And he wanted it at his church. She said, no, it's not big enough. We're going to have it over here. And then he said, well, then I'll have such and such the memorial part over here at my church the day before. She said, fine, you can do that. And so the memorial was one day, and then the funeral was another day. And she was right, because there was so many people.
Yeah.
My boyfriend at the time said I was there, and I'm saying he wasn't at the time, he was before that. And he said I couldn't get in. He said I was out with all these people in the streets, and he said, but we could hear the speakers, and they passed out programs to us. And I said, I didn't even know, who was there. I was kind of out of it. And I said, the next day, the funeral that your mother wanted at that other building, over 90 judges were there with black robes.
Oh my
goodness. My secretary's husband took pictures. He was in a balcony taking pictures, and you could see nothing but black robes. That whole section was reserved. Wow. I never saw another funeral like that.
Wow.
Any judge but my sister. And it was just so unreal to me, and I talk about that in the book. And I think a lot of people, they get the book, they said, you didn't tell me you were gonna make me cry. You didn't tell me. And my cousin who contacted me, she said, it took me 2 days to read the book. And she said, I'm stopping now, and it's 1 a.m. And she said, I've been reading this book all day. And she said, I got a little bit more I want to get to. And she's texting me this, right? She said, but I've already cried twice. And she says, I'm not gonna cry anymore. And so then the next day she texted me a long, I don't think I've ever had a text this long in life, but she texted me a long text, and she said, you got me one more time. and I just kind of chuckled. It's just that the passion that was coming out of me when I was writing, there would be days when I would have to just stop writing. And, it took such an emotional toil on me. I remember Judge Clark, my girlfriend, she said, this is when I began to really take over in the writing realm of this book. And she said, okay, you're going to write about your sister and her passing. She said, send it to me. She said, but you got to take me there. And I said, okay. I said, so I wrote it, and then I sent it to her. She said, but you ain't take me there. So I said, okay, I'm going to redraft it. And I went to writing again. And now it's hard for me to write this because this is about her death.
Yeah.
And so I write it. She said, this is better, but you didn't take me there.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I'll give you another draft. So I 2 more days go by, I'm writing it again. And this time I send it to her and she said, oh, you took me there. And
oh my goodness.
She said, and I haven't stopped crying. And she said, because I remember how you looked and I remember you rocking up in the front. And she said, I wanted to know what was going through your head when you rock like that. She said, you took me there. And I don't think, I don't know, the lady, it was a lady I was working with, could have really got into my head like that. I had to put it on paper.
It's beautiful.
Then I had to sit down. Okay. And then I took the approach that I was going to let all my readers know what's in my head. As a young girl, when you tell me not to go to law school and you're my boss and you're a white lady telling me that it's okay for me to be in education. And that was a good choice, Leonia. But law school is very, very, very hard. My son is in law school, Leonia, and it's very, very, very hard. And I looked at her and I said, oh, so in my mind, I want the readers to know what's going through my mind. It's okay for your son, but it's not okay for me. And that even though I'm a good student in undergrad, it's not the same. So therefore I won't be. Why? Because I'm not good enough. I said, why? Because he's white and I'm not. And then I tell the reader, I told her, I'm going to law school. I said, I'm going to teach first, and then I'm going to law school. And she just looked at me. And I say at the end of the chapter, I said, I didn't know we would meet up again 8 years later. Oh. And then I talk about it when I finished my last exam in law school. The art department that I worked at was a phone store away from the law school. Like when you come out, you can see it. Okay. And I said, wonder if that lady's still there. That was my boss, the one that told me don't go to law school. Because she didn't think I had it. So I said, I'm gonna go see. So I just, I had pep in my step. I finished my last exam, and so I walk in. It's glass, so you could see everybody before you even open the door. And I saw her, and I said, "There she is. She's more gray-headed now, but that's her." I said, "Wonder if she remembers me, since I was like the troublemaker." Okay, remember, I'm the one with the fro. I'm the one that that had a different way of doing things, and I'm the one with an attitude when they got ready to dock my pay because they said you took too long to come back. And I said, and it was me and another Black girl. They said they had already told her that they were docking her pay, and so she said, they're going to dock your pay. They're mad at us. I said, all I was getting was $1.70 an hour. They're going to dock my pay. That's fine. So when I was in there filing, she told the girl to please leave the room. She wanted to speak to me. And then she said, you all took way too long to come back, so I'm docking your pay. And she said, for an hour. And I said, okay, that's fine. I said, anything else? And so she said, what? I said, anything else? I said, that's fine. And she said, I don't understand you. You have really changed. I said, no, I haven't changed. I said, I've never liked a liar. That's pretty consistent with me. I had caught her in a lie. She said they weren't giving raises, and but they wanted me to watch the whole office. And so I sat there reading a newspaper from the school, and they said raises were now approved, and that they had lifted the freeze. And that was a month ago. I had asked, and she should have known when I asked. The freeze had already been lifted. And when they came back and I presented that to her, and she looked at me, turned red in the face, and she said, I'll look into it. I said, since you said I deserve a raise. Right. And so the next day she came up to me, hand on her hip, and she says, Leonia, we're going to give you a raise, and it will be retroactive to the date that the
Oh,
masons were lifted. I said, fine. I only
wow.
wanted what was due me.
Right, right,
And that's what was fair to
right.
continue on. So that's the same lady that I went back to. And I said, do you remember me? I used to work here. And she smiled at me. And and I know that meant no. And so I said, I had a twin sister. And then her smile went away. And I said, oh yeah, now we cooking. She remembers me now. I said, because I'm the one that gave her headaches. And I told her, I said, you gave me advice. Told me not to go to law school. I said, and you were right. It was very, very hard. I said, but I tell the reader, but what she didn't understand is that, but my mother and father had instilled in me I could be anything I wanted to be. That no one can stop me from being what I want to be,
Right,
except me,
right,
except me. I'm the only one who can stop.
right.
And
Yes.
so,
So,
and
Judge,
go ahead.
well, I want to, we have about 10 more minutes left, and I want to definitely talk about what year was it that your sister passed? And I want you to take us there, but I want people to read the book, so maybe you shouldn't answer that question.
Well, I'll only add a little bit about 2001.
Okay.
That was the day, June 8th, 2001. And
Mm-hmm.
and we had just spoken at a graduation. My sister and I, we had a choice. We could go to Michigan State's graduation. We were invited to be part of their ceremony, or we
Uh-huh.
could go to little eighth graders that were graduating junior high school, and most of them were going on into high school, and they wanted us to speak. And so
Mm-hmm.
Leona said, Leonia, one's in Michigan State. They've asked us this 2 years in a row, and she said their lives are pretty much set. They're okay.
Right.
She said,
Yeah.
but these little kids have never seen a judge. What if somebody looks at us, one of those kids, and says, I can do that. I can be.
Oh, yes.
And she said, I said, okay. She said, so let's do that one. So we said, okay.
Oh.
And so when it came, it was hot that day. Oh, it was like an oven outside, right? And so I said, Leona, we're just gonna wear our suits, and that's, we get up there, and she said, no, let's wear our robes. And I said, the robes. And she said, the ones with the velvet. Now the velvet robes were heavy and they were hot. And she didn't want to wear the summertime robe. She didn't want to wear that. And she said, and let's wear the hat. I said, Leona.
Oh my gosh, she wanted to show out for the kids though, right?
Right. She said, no, we're going to wear all of it. And
Uh-huh.
I gave in. And then she said, you're going to see. She said, those kids are going to be mesmerized when they see someone dressed like this.
Mm-hmm.
So when we walked out, they immediately stood and they were just clapping. They were so excited.
Oh.
And Leona looked at me and she said, what did I tell you? And I
Oh.
was like, yeah, she's right. She's right.
Oh.
And Leona got up and spoke first, and then I spoke second, and I got a standing ovation, and they gave us all these
Mm.
flowers, and then and I'm like hot like a stove. I got a suit on, and then I said, we take the robes off now, right? So we took the robes off, but then the families were coming up, and they wanted us to take pictures with their kids, and we said fine, and we would take pictures with all these kids, and until we stayed a bit of time doing this for people who, we shake the kids' hands and tell them something positive, and because that was the whole purpose of this in the first place. So once we left, and we were in the car, we were talking about it, and I was supposed to go back to her house because that was what we call movie night.
Mm-hmm.
Leona had rented a bunch of movies, and she said, oh, I got some good ones. And the one that she really wanted to show me was called 60 Seconds, and that's, with the fast cars and all that.
Uh-huh.
And so I get there and she's talking. We never started the movie because she's talking and I'm talking. Then our cousin comes in and she joins in and she's talking. I said, look, my sister called me 3 times and she said, when are you coming? When are you coming? When are you coming? And this guy was there and said, oh, well, I was going to come over. I said, no, I'm going down the street to my sister's and I'm going to watch this movie with her. Oh, rather do that than be with me. I said, yeah. And so I said, yeah, I would. And I hung up the phone. I finished smacking on a snack and I said, I'm on my way, Leona. She had called me again. So I'm on my way. And so that's when I said we got down there and we were talking. And then Gwen comes in and she's talking and Leona gives her a pair of earrings and Gwen was all excited. I said, okay, now y'all be quiet. We're going to start this movie. They said, okay. And I was sitting on the same love seat couch Leona was sitting on. And I started it and I said, and they said something. I said, I'm starting again. I'll be quiet. I did it 3 times. And the 3rd time they were quiet. And then we were watching it for like maybe 5 minutes. Leona kicked me and I said, and the kick was hard. So I said, why'd you kick me? She was gone, just like that. And I said, Leona, and I said, Leona, and her eyes were half masked. I said, Gwen, something's wrong with Leona. And then I started giving her, put her on the floor and tried to give her resuscitation. She was on the phone with EMS and they were telling me what to do. She was holding the phone and the ambulance was coming. And they were pumping her chest and inside the EMS. And then when she went in there, and I tell the reader what I was going through as I was waiting for her. But when he came out, he said, I'm sorry. He said her heart never started again. So, it was, hold on a second. I don't know what.
So was it a heart attack?
No, she had arterial sclerosis.
Oh.
And with arterial sclerosis, you have a blockage. Your valves have stacked up with fat and things like that. And then after it stacks up with fat, it just basically, any little tiny chip can fall and block it off, and they call it sudden death. And that's what 2 doctors explained that to me because they said, no, she didn't have any pain because it was too quick.
That's good.
And, but it was so unreal. Okay, a person is there 1 minute laughing with you and they're gone. I mean, until you really go through that. I mean, I've been through with my mother with her long illnesses, my father, the same thing. It's different. It's different when the person is healthy and they're laughing. She walked 5 miles a day, 5 miles a day on treadmill every day. I did not.
How old was she?
The time she died, she was 51.
Oh, wow. That's so young. Oh my gosh. So, So Judge Lloyd, you were still a judge. And then what is the message in the book that you want to share that carries on your sister's legacy and spirit? And what is your overall message for our trying times today in terms of equality and justice?
Okay, the message of the book is that you can never give up. You can never give up. You have to keep going. You have to have a plan. And you just can't let go. When that happened was the biggest upheaval in my life, where it was easy for me to throw the towel in. I mean, and I write about this, God sends you a life preserver, and he sent me one. It was a lady named Dr. Bennett, and she saw it on the news. It came on the news, judge dies. She looked and she said, I know she needs me. She was my miracle counselor. And so people are coming in, I'm in my bedroom. And I talk about, and then this is, we don't have enough time for this, but the bond between Leona and I never broke, even after death. Right. And I talk about that in the book, how many times she came back and what happened that I knew it was her. Your mother, one of the situations, when I had a gun pointed at my head, okay? And I told your mother the next day what had happened, and she said, you know how many cases we get like that? And I'm in a G-Wagon, come on. And then she said, I said, my sister's casket, I wanted her to be my guardian angel.
Oh.
I know. See, I'm gonna get you crying in a minute. But it's you can't give up no matter what. no matter what. And I said, the lady he sent helped me from the second day. She was here every day for 7 days in a row, and she normally didn't do that. And so I told her, I said, she would answer all these questions. Why? I mean, why? I feel this way. I feel that I'll never get over this. I will never. And she said,
Wow.
yes, you will. No, I won't. No, I won't. I will never stop crying. I will never stop this. I will never. And she said, first thing she did is had me get the doctor to order me something to go to sleep. I hadn't been asleep for 2 days. I said, well, when I close my eyes, I see myself pumping my sister's chest.
Oh.
I said, so I can't go to sleep. And she said, have you ate? I said, I'm not hungry. She says, no. This lady, and I talk about this because I carried it into drug court. I realized how fragile the brain is, okay? And how grief turns into depression. And I got a tear rolling down my face.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is so poignant.
But she showed me, if you can get the help that you need, you can pull through. You got to have someone guiding you. And every time someone came like that, you know, people who had cut their wrist, okay, and I'm holding their hands, and they're looking at me and they're crying. They don't see a reason why they should live. They don't. It's too hard. And I say, will you give me a chance? I will be with you every step of the way. And I would cut through the red tape and get them the counseling they needed right away. Because if you can get to them and really get the intensive counseling that they need, I saw them turn it around. I saw people turn it around. And I knew, because she helped me turn it around. Before I came back in those 3 months, I had started a scholarship program at Wayne State University. Put them in her name. It's and just the other day, I think this is the 26th or 7th scholarship recipient from the Judge Leona Lloyd Scholarship for law school. The thing is that I knew how to funnel that into something positive, because she showed me how. And I passed those things on. I call it playing it forward in the book, to make sure that a lot of people in my drug courts, parents died, et cetera. And I said, they're not going to come unglued. I'm not going to let them come unglued. I know how to stop this. I know how to stop it. And they would be strong. One girl had to plan. She went from being an addict for 20 years, had to plan her mother's funeral. She had to write the program. She had to do everything. Okay. And she said, I'm going to be all right. She said, Judge, normally I'd be getting high somewhere. She said, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do this. She said, I can do this now. See, I was sent to help. If I'm helping you with your life, and I'm there helping you get yours together, I don't have the luxury anymore to dwell in my sadness, because that's not what I'm supposed to do. This doctor got me out of that. And then you all asked me to do this, and I knew this was something Leona and I wanted to do. And I said, but when I got in there, I saw exactly how many broken people there were. That there were so many. And I played it forward. And to this day, I mean, I got a couple of stories in there, one from one young lady and one from a young man. And to see what they're doing with their lives now compared to what they were. And they tell you what they were. Okay. And you see one of them just got a master's degree. Okay. When you see that, okay, and this is a person turning it around.
Right.
Okay, and then you are now helping other people. You're touching other people out there. You're over the counselors. You've trained the counselors. And you're in a big organization that's going out doing positive things to help people that were addicts once like you. It's that's given. I don't know if I'm answering totally.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. So Judge Lloyd, you and your sister created such a powerful legacy, and I want everybody to read the book because it's just so unique, beautiful, brilliant, civic-minded, major contributions to our world, touching, transforming lives. where can people read your book? Where can they get it?
Well, of course, Amazon.com.
Okay.
There's a link on Amazon.com. And if you can't remember the link, you just put on there Judge Lloyd's book.
Okay.
And you see when it pops up and you see, the two of us, and you see these two little faces, and
Yeah.
you got the right book.
I love it. Can you hold that up again? It's Your Honor, Your Honor. And I'm going to put a link in the description box to Amazon so people can purchase it here from YouTube. There's a description area where I can put a link. So Your Honor by Judge Leonia Lloyd. And it's just all the stories she shared today that are so inspiring. You gave me goosebumps so many times because it's either sad or inspiring or just powerful. And
thank you.
I'm so immensely appreciative of you and all that you've done for the world and continue to do. So I wish you the absolute best with your book. Thank you for joining us today.
I really appreciate it, because when I got a note from one young lady who I didn't know, and she said, I read your book and I'm going back to school now. That now I've made a decision with my life. And this is why I wrote this book. I wrote it because, number one, you are not doing enough with your life. You know you can do more.
Right.
I expect you to do it. Look and see what we did and what we went through.
Yes.
And then you'll understand why you can do it.
Oh, that's so powerful. Thank you so much, Judge Lloyd. I wish you the absolute best. Thank you for joining me here today. And thank you to all of you for joining us here on Author Talks, where you got to meet amazing Judge Leonia Lloyd, retired judge from 36th District Court, now author of Your Honor, Your Honor, and a beautiful storyteller who I hope you have been engaged and entertained and inspired during this time. Thank you. And happy reading. Be sure to pick up her book. Thank you, Judge Lloyd.
Thank you.
You're welcome.